Get ready. It's time for the Idaho Podcast with your host, Danny Ventura. Welcome to the Idaho Podcast, where we feature the people who live, work, and play in Idaho. Thanks for joining us today. Today, my guest is Emily Green, and Emily has lived in Idaho almost her entire life since she was age 1. And Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Danny. Thanks for having me.
Of course. You were born in Nevada, but as I said, you moved here when you were 1 year old, and I believe your mom decided to move to Idaho. So what brought you here? What's kept you here? And what do you love most about Idaho? What's your Idaho story?
Yeah. So my mom moved us here when I was about 12 months old, like you said. And she was from Idaho. She was actually born and raised in Boise until she was in her, teenage years. And then she moved to Las Vegas, which is a very different place.
Yes, it is.
And she hated it. And she always wanted to come back to Boise. So she was really thrilled when she had the opportunity to finally move, back home and, start raising a family here instead. I have a brother who's 5 years older than me. So she was already kind of chomping at the bit to get here. And so that's how we landed here. And we moved out into the country between Kuna and Melba. There's still really not a whole lot out there.
Which I love about it, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
I hope it stays that way, selfishly. But I mean,
me too. I actually still go and I'll Google the house that I grew up in and just, every once in a while just to see if it's for sale. So I'm like, maybe one day.
And tell us a little bit about that, because you described it to me as such a picturesque and quaint farm. And I would love the viewers to hear more about that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It was the place to grow up as a kid. So we had about 3 acres and we had ducks and a chicken coop. We had, at one point we had pretty much every single animal that you can imagine. We had a couple cows and a horse, some sheep. I think we even had fostered a pig at one point. But yeah, we had this wonderful space that my parents had kind of developed. My brother and I got to choose our own fruit tree. Mine was the plum. His was the apricot. So we planted an orchard and we had a frog pond, and it was just like the place to grow up. Huge shade trees, a trampoline, a dog, cats. So yeah,
great childhood memories for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
And that would be so cool if that property was available. You could pick it up. That would be incredible.
Yeah, every once in a while, I'll just double check and see if it's for sale. It'd be pretty neat.
That would be
at least own it as an investment property or something, just to be able to go back and relive some of that.
Right. So you've been married for about 7.5 years, and you have a son who is almost 2, and you have a son on the way coming in June. Congratulations. Yes. I think you and your family really enjoy fly fishing and camping, but what other things do you enjoy? And specifically to fly fishing and camping, where are some of the places you like to go that you recommend?
Ooh, well, I can't tell you all of those. No, really though. We love being outside, love being outdoors. My husband's actually taking our son. He'll be 2 next Tuesday. And he's actually taking him for his first fly fishing adventure this weekend. Even just going down to the Boise River here in town is great. There's a great spot over by Glenwood. There's so many wonderful spots. You just have to find them. That's if we're going to stay in town. If we're going to go, somewhere else, we really like to find places that we haven't been to yet. There's not really like one particular place, sure. Right? Now with having a family, it's a little bit, we have to definitely dial it in to where it's an hour or 2 away from town. And some great places for a lot of people are the South Fork of the Boise, which is kind of over like Mountain Home direction, right? That's a really popular place though too. So you have to be careful what time you go. camping and fishing, those are definitely our things. And just being in the water, anything that has to do with the water.
Hmm.
We have pontoon boats, and bass fishing is also really, really fun because when you're fly fishing and you're fishing for bass, you can just see them, you can watch them coming up out of the water, and it's just really fun. So,
That's neat. That's
yeah.
neat. And you attended BSU with actually overachiever because you have a double major, one in civil engineering and one in Spanish, which you must be pretty fluent in Spanish because I know you said you actually took Spanish classes even before college, right?
Sí,
Yeah,
yes.
sí, sí, es correcto.
Sí.
Vamos a la playa.
Yeah, I started taking Spanish in sixth grade, actually. Like the very first time that it was available, I made my parents take me to school an hour early. And yeah, I've been taking it ever since. I took it through junior high and high school, and it was one of my majors at BSU. And
That's so great.
um,
Do you use it often?
not as often as I'd like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely I try. I have quite a few friends that when we get together, we try to just speak Spanish together. But yeah, as you and I were talking about earlier, if you don't use it, you do kind of lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband and I try to go to Mexico often as well, and he loves it because he can understand enough of it, but he doesn't speak it. So he can just kind of sit back and relax and not have to say much to anybody. And I'm like talking to everybody that I possibly can. So
Yeah, that would be a good position for him if he understands most of it. So he could sit back and go, okay, I understood what it said. Tell him, Emily.
yeah, but he's like, I don't have to say anything because they think that I don't know.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So civil engineering, right? Is that your other major? So what were your intentions initially with the civil engineering degree, and what made you leave the engineering world?
So funny enough, I've actually always hated math through school, but I was always really good at it. And I always have been just a people person. I love people. So I was thinking, okay, I'm really good at math. And I'm really good with people. And most engineers don't quite have that edge. So I thought this will be great because I'll have kind of the best of both worlds that I'll be able to offer. And I'll get the best job possible. And then I realized as I was in my third year of civil engineering at BSU, these aren't my people. I can't see, I can't foresee like going and grabbing a beer with them after work because they're not going to want to hang out with me. They're not people. And that's what I crave. I don't want to go into a career for my entire life where I'm working with people that are just too introverted for me. I'm a little bit more of an extrovert, as you can tell.
So you're saying civil engineers are boring?
No.
I'm kidding.
They just think differently.
Good answer.
And yeah, but I love creative problem solving, and that really comes into my day to day still. So yeah, it's I still try to weave those kinds of things into what I do for my current career, but it's just people is like the number one thing for me.
Yeah, and I love that about you. That's awesome, and it shows. But my wife and I love going to the BSU games and tailgating, and it's just so much fun. And I love the really the loyalty of the fans because you don't see that so much everywhere. But here, maybe it's because it's one of our main sports. Besides, we don't have a professional sports team really outside of hockey, that type of thing.
Right.
But at any rate, BSU games are so much fun. Do you still go to BSU games as being a grad, or is it?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm not a huge football fan.
Oh,
But I do love tailgating.
okay.
So yeah. So if someone invites me to their tailgate, I am there.
Got it.
But I'm
Noted.
probably not going to spend all the money on the tickets because I don't really care as much about football.
Got it. So you're in for the party.
Yes, exactly. For the people again.
That's great. You are very active with BNI, which for those of you who don't know anything about BNI, it's really a networking organization for business owners and businesses. And you are an ambassador and also membership chair of BNI. You serve so gracefully and so passionately. What is it about BNI that inspires you to serve in that capacity and also to connect people like you do?
Oh, I love BNI. So I have been a member of my chapter in BNI for about 8.5 years. And I don't know where my business and my life would be without that community of people. It's such a wonderful opportunity to connect with and learn from other business owners, other entrepreneurs, other people who are just there for all the right reasons, like I am, right? Just that we want to grow together, we want to help each other, and it's also really nice because when there's something that I need or something that a family or friend needs, I have this wonderful tribe of people that I know is going to take great care of them, right? And I can connect them really well. So it makes me look like the hero too,
Sure,
right?
sure.
But really, I just want everybody to, I think we all have an experience where we've had to Google search something, some sort of service, and it's been a nightmare. And BNI kind of prevents that, right? Because we all are kind of at the caliber of, uh, service, the level of service that we provide, and our expectations of each other, where we all hold each other accountable. And so, yeah, I just love being able to connect with people and just be able to help everybody in my group and in just BNI in general. There's, I think we're up to 17 chapters locally here now.
Mm.
And it's just so nice to just watch everybody grow together, you know?
That is so cool. And again, for those of you who may not know much about BNI, it literally is comprised of every single business that you can imagine, from plumbers to HVAC to painters to massage therapists to dentists. I mean, mortgage bankers, realtors, and you limit the number of each one of those trades in each chapter, correct? So I love that it promotes community and promotes one another because it's not just so self-serving. It's such a great organization. And if you own a business out there, folks, I really highly recommend that you look into BNI. You can be a guest at any meeting, and it's free of charge. You can check it out, kind of take a test drive, and see if it's a good fit for you. But I think it's a great networking opportunity, as you said, because other folks in the community who are business owners will help promote you as well because they have
Oh,
you
yes.
for foremost in mind.
BNI year over year, after you get over that first year hump where people are just getting to know you and trust you, and it's year over year made up over 30% of my business. So it's
Wow,
huge.
that's a big number.
And yeah, and it's just like I said, they're some of my favorite humans in the world now. It's great. But yeah, BNI-Idaho, if anybody wants to check it out, you have the roster for all the chapters and all the times and meetings, and where we meet and when we meet. And yeah, everyone's welcome to come.
So that's bniidaho.com. Oh,
BNI-Idaho.com.
dash Idaho. So it's a hyphen. Okay.
Yes, hyphen.
bni-idaho.com.
That's right.
So check it out, especially if you own a business and if you want to promote that business and get to know other business owners in the community. It's a great organization. So
Yeah.
that's great. And I love that you volunteer so much for them. So that says a lot about you. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So one thing that really impressed me was how you really invested in getting to know me and the why of the podcast before you agreed to accept the invitation to be a guest. And I love that. And as I'd mentioned to you, I think some people would be taken aback by that because they're like, well, who are you to ask me these questions? But I actually really appreciated it because it showed me that you were interested enough to get to know not only me as a person, but what my podcast was all about, so that there was good alignment for both of us, not just coming on a show to either with an agenda or to promote yourself or to promote whatever. And I really appreciated that. Why is it so important for you, not just in that context, but in your career, in your vocation, even through BNI? Why is it so important for you to learn so much about someone ahead of potentially partnering with them or doing business with them?
Yeah. This is, hopefully for us, not just the first time or the last time that we're going to be, talking to each other, right? And it's not just a transaction, it's a relationship, right? And that's how I see everything in my life, with my clients, with, referral partners, with other, community members. I spend so much of my time, I work more than full time because I love what I do.
Sure.
And I spend so much of my time with my clients and with networking partners and those kinds of things, that I want to have good people in my life, good energy surrounding me. We get to create what we want in our lives. Like, we're not just victims, So I like to make sure that I'm working with people who I enjoy working with, because I get to choose.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I like instantly, as soon as Megan connected us,
Mm-hmm.
I instantly already had that level of respect because I know her really well.
Mm.
And immediately upon talking to you, I was like, oh, this guy's great. He's going
Oh,
to be fun to get to know.
oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah. So, and it's important to me too that I am able to reciprocate and see what I can do to help you grow your podcast and do what I can do to, give back. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I was so struck by. It almost felt like you wanted to promote me more than you wanted to be on the podcast. And I felt like, wow, that's coming from the right place in your heart to do that. And it was just really heartwarming and refreshing from my perspective. So I appreciate your approach on that.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks
that's
for having
cool.
me. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one thing we haven't talked about yet is you've been a mortgage consultant for the last 8.5 years. So, and again, you majored in civil engineering and in Spanish, but what share more about your mortgage career journey and why what you enjoy most about it.
So, kind of going back to school, the school part of it, my top three kind of career choices were maybe going to law school and becoming a lawyer, maybe becoming a teacher, although the salary there is really sad, right? Love you,
It is,
teachers.
it is sad.
Yes. And then civil engineering was, obviously my top one. And I, um, I, I had jobs, right? I started working when I was 14 and I haven't stopped since. And I've always had just a job, right? And when I realized that civil engineering wasn't quite the path that I wanted to take, I had to get another job. I actually started in a staffing manager position for an employment agency. And anyway, long story short, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm so burnt out on just this repetitive, you get really good at something and then it becomes boring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, I don't want just another job. I actually want to start a career. So this was in 2014, 2015. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to start interviewing people in industries that I'm interested in that I think kind of line up with what I want to do and find out all the good, the bad, and the ugly about what they do. Like, give me all the nitty gritty details, the things that you might not share with everybody.
Behind
And
the curtain.
yes, tell
Show
me
me
everything.
right.
So one of the choices that I had was mortgage, and I interviewed somebody, and he actually trained me. He actually brought me on and trained me and mentored me, and it was just the being a mortgage lender, I get to involve kind of all the top things that are really important to me. Number one, people, right? Going back to the people, I want to be able to help people in the best possible way, and from a place of like genuine care, right? And then also from a numbers and problem solving standpoint, I get to, definitely incorporate that into my day to day because I work with numbers all the time. You give me some mortgage math and I'll spit out the answer, and just in my head. And then kind of like on the lawyering side of things, I do a lot of that with my clients where I'm, kind of going back and forth between our situation and the underwriter or the underwriting guidelines, maybe even, and just figuring out like what works, what fits in the box and what doesn't, and how I can advocate for my clients. And then from the teaching standpoint, I really get to teach my clients about the process and make sure that they feel really educated. And that's my number one thing, just that they know what their options are and what it means. Like, what is even PMI? What's LTV? What's DTI? You have all these terms that it makes the mortgage world seem so like out of reach, right? Because I think it's intentionally made to be more confusing than it needs to be. So I like to just like bring it down to layman's terms and explain it in a way that my clients can actually make sense of it, and just make sure that they understand their options and what the process looks like. And once somebody comes in and actually meets with me and we look at where they're at versus where they want to be and how we get to that point, it takes all the fear and anxiety of the home buying process totally out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you know your numbers, you're like, oh, okay, well, now I know. Now I can actually use this information instead of just wondering and guessing and just assuming like, oh, I can never buy a house. But it's usually a lot more in reach than you think it is.
And part of the education part that you broke out the three part of why you enjoy it and what you love so much about it is I know that you really help folks use property and real estate to amass, I'll say wealth, but amass, have investments and assets that will hopefully help them with passive income and continue to grow their portfolio, if you will. So share a little bit about that and what you do there.
Yeah. So it's, when I'm meeting with any client, whether they're a first-time home buyer or they're purchasing their 17th investment property, it's not just transactional, right? We're not just focusing on this one piece of the puzzle. I want to make sure that I'm helping them look, because it can be hard, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. It can be really hard to not just get super hyper focused on today. So I like to make sure that people are looking at the bigger picture, and what does it look like for you in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you want to eventually accumulate additional properties, or do you want to just use this property, let it appreciate and gain enough equity to where then you can sell it and move up and upsize? There's a couple of different strategies there, but either way, whether your goal is to have a lot of properties that you can therefore give to your kids, your grandkids, and just have a huge amount of wealth by the time you're retired. Or maybe your goal is to, like I said, just move up to that $3 million house eventually. Whatever that goal is, let's talk about it. And let's at least just get the wheels turning for you and start thinking about, oh, this is actually possible. I just have to start with step one. Right. So yeah, I love to just open people's eyes up to the possibility, because I always tell my clients, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So whereas rates are, a little bit higher right now, I think a lot of people are kind of apprehensive to want to buy a home, which is totally understandable. All it really ultimately comes down to is your monthly payment. Are you comfortable with that payment? Are you not, right? We have creative ways to make you more comfortable. But ultimately, if you're not comfortable buying a home right now, then don't do it, right? But if we can make the numbers work to where you're like, okay, yeah, I could totally pull that off, then buy a home as soon as you possibly can. Because in a year from now, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I bought that house when I did, And then in 5 years from now, you're going to look back and be like, wow, I have $300,000 worth of equity. Like, I had no idea that I could accumulate this fast.
I appreciate a lot of what you said, and especially what you said early on about it's not transactional. Yet, I would argue that a lot of mortgage bankers make it transactional, and that they kind of take out the personal touch, as well as the personal investment into the client, like you're doing, to find out, so what are your long-term goals? You're not just looking to close this mortgage or to secure that mortgage for them, but you're, like you said, you're asking the questions, what is it you're trying to accomplish long term? And I love that you're willing to help them along the way and in their path and their journey. And that makes it non-transactional. And that's so important to me. And I think that's what makes you successful, frankly. One of the many things that make you successful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's easy to close a loan, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it,
Sure. No, of course.
but it takes a lot more patience and time and dedication to each individual person to really make sure that they know that you're there for them long term. So yeah, I love my clients.
And it shows. That's good. As a mortgage consultant of 8.5 years or so, what would be your advice to those looking to purchase a home, whether it's first time buyer or somebody, it might be their fifth or eighth home? It doesn't really matter. In this market today, which is kind of crazy, what would be your best advice to people seeking to buy a home?
I think, again, whether you own a home now or not, if you're thinking, this isn't my forever home, or I definitely don't want to be renting my whole life, now is the time to sit down with a mortgage lender. The sooner you do it, the way more prepared you're going to be. I often work with clients for 1 or 2 or 3 years before they actually pull the trigger. And you don't have to start the process all over again every single time. Once we get a loan application going for you and just kind of lay out a game plan, you're going to feel so much better about where you're at and where you need to be and how to get there. And so my advice is just to do it, just to rip the Band-Aid off. It's not that hard. It takes about an hour probably to just go through everything. But then once you know your numbers, like I said, your anxiety and fear will just totally vanish. And then you'll be able to plan. And again, if it's, 2 months from now, great. If it's 12 months from now, great. but at least then you'll know exactly what you need to do and what your numbers look like.
Yeah.
And again, from there, we can make edits and tweaks and changes and add stuff and take stuff out along the way on your loan application and make adjustments to what the market's doing rate wise. So you can always check back in with your lender and say, hey, okay, so, I did my application 6 months ago, but like now, what does that look like? So we can always pull those numbers back up.
That's good advice. Get started early, regardless of where you are. But again, whether it's your first home, your 10th home, doesn't matter. Get started early so that, your mortgage banker knows what's best for you, and you can plan accordingly. Like you said, whether it's 1 year out, 6 months out, or 2 years out, it still probably behooves anybody to get started early and either you're there or ready to go, or you're waiting for interest rates or waiting for the opportunity, or you're not there yet, and the mortgage banker can help you get there when the opportunity does strike. So that's great advice. So I even hate to ask you for the tip of the show, because that was a great tip, but the acronym for the Idaho podcast is TIP, TIP.
The Idaho podcast.
The Idaho podcast.
Yeah.
And so what would be your tip for our listeners today?
The thing that I carry with me from day to day is the quote, who I honestly don't even know who wrote it, but it's get involved. The world is run by those who show up. So be there, just be fully present in your day to day and do what you're passionate about doing, and everybody will love you for it. So
I love to show up and be present.
Yes.
I love that. And that is a present. Thanks for that tip.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thanks for
Emily,
having me.
it's been awesome having you on the show, Emily Green. I appreciate getting to know you and hearing your story and your journey. And congratulations on your second son in June, and wish you the very best with all of that, you and your husband. And many happy wishes for more camping and more fly fishing, and good luck with your 2-year-old who your husband's taking out for the first time out fly fishing.
I know.
That's
I can't
awesome.
wait
You
to
got to
see
take pictures as
pictures.
but it's just been great getting to know you. And thanks for coming on the show today. And I just, again, appreciate everything you do for the community as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Danny.
Of course. And thank you for joining us today on the Idaho Podcast. We really appreciate your support. Please go to our website at theidahopodcast.com and be sure to subscribe there, as well as subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. So hope you have a great week. Take care.